Welcome back to our guide on designing a character to import into Super Smash Bros. 64. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 1, Designing Our Model. In this video, we're going to learn about the basics of designing a model for Super Smash Bros. 64. We're going to look at basics at the moment, being finding our model, setting up our model, fixing our textures, and getting it ready for rigging. The first thing I do want to mention, though, when it comes to this process, is the strong notion of don't love your model. I say this specifically because while we can design an incredibly elegant, super smooth model that will be absolutely gorgeous to look at, when it comes to the rigging process, things will move, things will get jostled, and it may not look exactly the way you planned it. We want something that's efficient, and we can tweak it as we go, but don't love your model. Given we are working on Brian from Quest 64, we have to sit down and figure out how we're going to do this. One of the first things I would recommend is finding a model. Oftentimes, if you have a character that you want to make, such as 2B from Nier Automata, or Vavel from Robot Alchemic Drive, or Ryu from Breath of Fire 3, you'll find that the model or models that exist are not optimal. You'll have to make your own. What I would recommend is to pause this video here and find a tutorial on making models and follow that. They will explain it much better than I can. All I can say is that if you are making a model, or if you are modifying a model for Smash Bros. 64, that we keep tries in mind. What do I mean by tries? Each model is created from triangles. These triangles work together to create any model that we see in a Nintendo 64 game. The more tries or triangles there are, the more round said object can look. For Super Smash Bros. 64, characters have a few different limits of tries. They're not hard limits by any means, but on average, a character's high poly model will have 320 tries, while their low poly model will have 200 tries, and their skeleton is roughly the same as the low poly model, being 200 or less. When Smash Bros. 64 is rendering a character, it will load in the high poly model if it's paused or a 1v1 match, or it will load in the low poly model if it's more than 4 characters on screen. Given we are creating a character to import into Smash Bros., we need to create all 3 sets of models. When it comes to the tries, these are not hard limits. We can create a model that has a high poly count of 400 and maybe pushing it 500. But we're looking for performance. The character we create, we want to be able to exist and work on an actual Nintendo 64 device. With this in mind, we want to make sure that the tries are within reason. Now that we've discussed a little bit about basic modeling, let's take a look at importing and working on Brian. We need a model. One resource that I can recommend is modelsresource.com. This is a website where fans of 3D models and games come together and rip and upload OBJs and FBX models for anybody to use. I'm here because they have a section on the Nintendo 64, and inside that section there is Quest 64, and very specifically they have a 3D model for Brian. This model was ripped directly from the game and uploaded to the website. If we download said model from the website, we see that there's a README. Oftentimes models come with READMEs, but if they don't, we can see here who uploaded said model. For Brian, we can see that C1.0 had ripped the model from Quest 64, while E-Man performed UV corrections. In the case of Brian, we see that the README says credit goes to C1.0 and E-Man. This is important. Some models will basically have a notion saying credit not needed, or something along the lines of no need for crediting ripping to. I disagree with this. Unless you are ripping the model directly from the ROMs yourself, you must always give credit where credit is due. When we are making the credits or importing textures associated with this mod, these names need to be remembered. And that goes back to the design document we discussed in the prior part. Put these names in your design document. If you get any assistance from anyone else, always, and I mean always, give credit. Now that we have our model, let's import it into Blender and start taking a look and seeing what we have. I'm going to separate Chapter 1 into multiple distinct parts. That way individuals can jump directly to the video in question without having to hear me ramble too much.